Almost, it's 1 o'clock, so we're gonna get started.
Okay.
Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Kathy Hall. I am the Executive Director of the Nebraska Statewide Independent Living Council. I would like to thank Melanie Davis from the University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities and Munroe-Meyer. Melanie will be helping me in the background during this series, and she'll be putting information into the chat box for you of the various links for the YouTube channel with all the video recordings for all of this series, and for the Dropbox, which will contain the PowerPoints for today's presentation. I would like to acknowledge all the groups that have been involved in the planning. That's the League of Human Dignity, Independence Rising, Easter Seals, Nebraska, Madonna School and Community-Based Services, APSE, Nebraska VR, Adapt Nebraska, Integrative Transitions, the Nebraska Family Support Network, Nebraska Statewide Independent Living Council, Disability Rights in Nebraska, University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, Nebraska Council on Developmental Disabilities, People First of Nebraska, the Arc of Nebraska, Harper Self-Directed Services, the Brain Injury Alliance of Nebraska, Assistive Technology Partnership, Outlook in Richmond, PTI Nebraska, Outlook Nebraska, and the Ollie Web Center Incorporated. In the Dropbox, there is a list of the keystrokes to make Zoom work if anybody needs to do it that way. Depending on the device you're using, your toolbar will be at the top or the bottom of your screen. There are 2 sign language interpreters, and they will be spotlighted to make it easier for people with their deaf or hard of hearing to use them. And I would like to thank both of them for the tremendous amount of work they're doing. All sessions closed caption. To turn it on, click on the little arrow that's right beside the CC button, and you will enable subtitles, and it'll come right up. And if you have any questions, put them under the Q&A tab, because otherwise it's too easy to lose questions in the chat. Melanie and will be watching the chat, and so will I, but things get lost. I am going to now turn it over to Don Dew, who will be the moderator of the panel today. Don?
Thank you, Kathy, and good afternoon, everybody. I appreciate you taking
a little bit of your afternoon to listen to our panel. We have a great presentation from 2 different centers for independent living in Nebraska. And first, what I want to say is centers for independent living are kind of a murky name that a lot of people don't know, which is why we're doing this as a disability education series. So what we're doing today are the federally mandated 5 core services. Each center have other services that they do. So if you have any questions on what other services they do, please feel free to ask them, because they will have information on their own center at the end. But I'll be watching the Q&A also to see if there's questions. Also, we are going to start out with what exactly centers for independent living are, or CILs, CILs. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary Stockwell of Independence Rising.
Hello, I'm Mary from Independence Rising, and I'm an independent living supervisor. And so what is a center for independent living? Centers for independent living are non-residential, generally nonprofit organizations that are run for and by people with disabilities. They are consumer-controlled, community-based organizations that provide programs and services for people with all types of disabilities through the lifespan. The goal of CILs is to promote and support opportunities for people with disabilities to fully participate in an integrated community, reach their community-based living goals. CILs are unique in that they operate according to a philosophy of consumer control, where people with all types of disabilities govern and staff the organization. Centers provide peer support, information and referral, individual and systems advocacy, independent living skills training, and transition services. Centers for Independent Living serve as a strong advocacy voice on a wide range of national, state, and local issues. In addition to the 5 core services that are free to consumers, many CILs offer fee-for-service programs as well. There are over 400 centers in the United States, and they're represented in every state. A majority of individuals working for CILs have experienced a disability in their life.
Thank you, Mary.
Yes.
Okay.
So I just want to jump in here too, is we are going to talk about what makes centers different than, say, a social service agency, and that's the independent living philosophy.
Yes.
And
so I'd just like to share that independent living is both a movement, a culture, and a program. It's a way of looking at disability that puts the individual first and the disability second. The independent living movement says people with a disability are people first. They make important decisions that affect their lives. They have relationships with whom they choose. They have access to all the benefits of society, and they live as independently as they choose. The independent living movement promotes self-determination. And self-determination is people choosing and setting their own goals, being involved in making life decisions, self-advocating, and working to reach their goals. Self-determination is about taking action in your life and getting the things that you want and need. The independent living movement uses people-first language, such as people with disabilities instead of disabled people. This shows that the person is most important, not the disability. The history of the independent living movement is valuable to understand. Unfortunately, we don't have time to cover all that today. I did put the website for ILU website. It's Independent Living Research Utilization in the Dropbox, and there's a lot of good information there on the history that you can look up. Thank you.
that's great. Thank you so much. The IL core services is going to be they will be talked about by the co-CEO of the League of Human Dignity, Kathy Kay.
Hi, and now I'm trying to figure out here how to share my screen. So why isn't this working? It's not giving me the option to share my screen. Kathy, Dawn.
Were you made a co-host? Did Kathy send that to you?
I'm not sure if she did.
Yeah.
You should be able to just go on
And
during this meeting and make me a host.
I made you co-host. Let me check.
I checked, Kathy. She should be co-host.
Okay, so you're co-host.
But usually I can just click something that says share my screen. How come that isn't showing up? Help.
Do you have it open?
Yes, I do.
there's not a green box that says share screen between chat and record.
Hang on. Hang on. Ta-da! Okay.
You're not. No, rest of it. There it goes.
There it is. Okay. So thank you very much to Mary for that wonderful, wonderful explanation of not only Centers for Independent Living, but the independent living philosophy, because that is so crucial. And I think Mary did a very, very good job of making that very easy to understand and very comprehensive. So thank you for that, Mary. Now, following on with what Mary has told you, I'm going to talk about the 5 core services, because those are the elements of what makes a Center for Independent Living. So the first thing we want to talk to you about is here at the League, we are consumer-based, as Mary said. That's what Centers for Independent Living are, consumer-controlled nonprofit organization. And then we offer services to people with disabilities to help them become independent.
Excuse me, Kathy, could you put that?
Hang on, I have an issue. Hang on one.
Put that into the slideshow.
That was my IT technical advisor. So now we have it right. So that's what the independent living movement's about. We believe everybody just needs some supports. Obviously, I need some when it comes to computers. Okay, so back to the League, and this would be covering all Centers for Independent Living as well, but they're consumer-based, consumer-controlled, and that is what Mary talked about. And we have the 5 federally mandated core services, which are peer counseling and support, information and referral, individual systems advocacy, independent living skills training, and transition. Peer counseling and support is where we connect consumers with others who have disabilities and can offer their expertise and experience in achieving and maintaining their independence. Information and referral. This is one of the building blocks of Centers for Independent Living. This is one of the major things that we do. We provide information to consumers and work to find answers to disability-related questions, as well as referring consumers to other partner organizations and other programs. Individual and systems advocacy. Individual advocacy includes training that helps consumers learn how to become their own advocates and to access the programs and services that they need. Systems advocacy includes advocating for disability rights within the community, state, and nationally on a larger scale, not just something that affects a person individually, but something that would affect a group. Advocacy means to change what is into what should be. Independent living skills training. Training topics are tailored to the individual needs of each consumer, and they're all aimed at helping them live independently. So these are consumer directed. They tell the Center for Independent Living what independent living skills they need training with. They get to determine what is important to them and that they need to learn. Transition. This has two elements to it. Transition services include helping consumers transition out of unnecessary institutionalization into independent living, or helping consumers remain independent when they're in danger of being forced into an institution. It also is youth transition services, which include helping young people transition from school to post-secondary education, to either the workforce, if possible, or independent living, whatever they choose. So now I can stop my sharing. So those are the core services that Centers for Independent Living provide. Of course, as they said, there are 2 Centers for Independent Living in in Nebraska. We have one in Lincoln. We have one in Norfolk, one in Omaha, and then Independence Rising covers another part of the state. But the important thing is the entire state is covered for independent living services. There are no unserved counties, and every single Nebraskan with a disability has access to receive services, these 5 core services, through Centers for Independent Living. So thank you. That tells you a little bit about Centers for Independent Living, the 5 core services. And now we are going to talk about, first, we are going to start the league and talk about how we actually provide those core services. And then we'll transition back over, and Mary will talk about Independence Rising and how they provide those core services. So we talked about the peer counseling and support, and Mary also talked about it when she discussed Centers for Independent Living and what they do. 51% of staff in a Center for Independent Living has to experience a disability. And then you also have a board of directors of that Center for Independent Living, and they have to have at least 51% experience a disability. Now, the reason for that is the movement of independent living is all about nothing about us without us. People with disabilities understand what they need and what they want. And so other people with disabilities can help share their experiences, the things that they've had to overcome, and ways they've been able to overcome living with a disability. So that's peer counseling and support. So not only do we have staff with disabilities that are able to help with questions that people have, we also can take the people that we work with and set them up into groups so that they can further have even social groups of, people maybe that want to do wheelchair yoga, things like that. So it supports that network of peers helping peers, people with disabilities helping other people with disabilities. Information and referral. Information referral means exactly that. We give information, and if it's something that the Center for Independent Living can't do, if we can't do, we refer you on. So we refer to legal aid, we refer to if a person is experiencing a barrier, maybe they use a wheelchair and they need a ramp or a chairlift, we are able to refer them on to resources so that they can stay in their own home, safely get in and out of their own home, utilize their own home. We help people, we refer for kitchen modifications so they can, use if they're in a wheelchair and they need to be able to roll up to their cabinets. All of that is information referral. We also refer if a person needs a care attendant and they qualify for the Medicaid home community-based services waiver here in Nebraska, then we can refer them on for those services. We refer to state and government funded programs such as EBT, Medicaid, PASS, health insurance, SHIP, SSI, anything that's going to support somebody in living as independently as possible. We also work on housing, on information referral. People come to us. One of the big issues in Nebraska is there's not enough affordable, accessible housing. And so we work with people to help them with that. options counseling, how to be able to work and not jeopardize receiving maybe SSDI. We do accessible design consultations for businesses, schools, or other entities. That's where we go in and we help them comply with ADA, make sure that they have their entrances are correct, wide enough, that there aren't barriers for people that utilize a chair or have other disabilities. We also work with people on helping them with people that have vision disability, of course, to make sure that they have those walkways marked and the paint colors different to help people that maybe have a vision not completely blind, but they need that differentiation so that it's not a tripping hazard. And so we work with people on that. Advocacy. So we talked a little bit about advocacy. What is that? Individual advocacy. The main thing we do with this is we want to make sure that we model and help people to become their own advocates. We don't do it for people. We teach them how to do it for themselves because they are their best advocate. They know what they want. And sometimes people just need some support in learning how to go about that process. So we work with people on disability determinations. If a person gets a disability denial, and we can help them secure legal representation to get that Social Security disability determination. Systems change. We help people file Department of Justice suits for either individual or systems change advocacy. That's also ADA violations. That's American with Disabilities Act. Sorry, I forget acronyms to explain them. Also, Department of Justice actions. We can help people with that in filing those, and that can be on a large scale. It can be, for the whole state, for the country. We work on not only just the state level, but this could be something that could be national on systems change. Independent living skills training. So this helps people with budgeting, financial management, relationship issues, personal assistant, finding, training, evaluating their personal assistant, cooking with a disability, learning how to use dressing aids, bathing, using assisted technology to increase their independence. We teach living well with a disability as well as working well with a disability to help people in overcoming any of those barriers they have. We also do a durable medical equipment and loan program that if people need certain items to be able to stay independent, wheelchairs, walkers, Hoyer lifts, bath, shower chairs. We also have a model home in our Center for Independent Living in Lincoln and as well as in Norfolk. And we have in our model home, we have a kitchen and we have a bathroom and we also have a area with a washer and dryer to show how you can modify your house to make it so that if you utilize a chair that you can stay in your own home, or if you're building a home, what you need to do to make sure that it's accessible. We also use that to let people try out things with the equipment, medical, the loan and rental, if they want to try things and to see what works best for them, like the shower chairs or transfer benches. We have a bathtub and a roll-in shower so they can try those things out. And also, so then transition. And this is a real big one, especially now during COVID, because we have a lot of people in institutions that are at greater risk of dying from COVID in that congregate living. So we help people transition out of the hospital and to be able to go home with their supports and modifications as needed. We help transition out of nursing homes or assisted living facilities to their home of their choosing with support and modifications, and also transitioning youth from secondary education. So that means we take each youth on what they want. Do they want to go to college? Do they want to go to trade school? Do they want to just do an internship? Do they want to volunteer? Do they not want to work and they want to just pursue supplemental income, so SSDI, so that they can stay? Whatever they choose, that is youth transition. So it's going from when, out of high school, when that secondary ends, and then what's the next step so that they can be as independent as possible. So that gives you an idea on, we talked about the 5 core services. Mary talked about what centers are, and then I talked about what the 5 core services. So we told you a little bit about what the league does to support those 5 core services. And now I'm going to turn it back to Mary, and she's going to talk about Independence Rising and how they provide those 5 core services. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. So Nebraska, is rural. And Jamie, go ahead and you can start the PowerPoint. So we're always looking for ways to reach consumers and meet their needs. Technology now plays a bigger role due to the pandemic, and this is likely to continue. It's important for Independence Rising to continually look for creative solutions to extend the reach of our independent living services. We have a desire to reach the most rural and remote areas of the state. Independence Rising works to provide core services to communities and counties by being involved in interagency meetings, Chamber of Commerce, collaboratives, healthcare contacts, like discharge planners and case managers, school districts, transition teams, special education administration, and teachers. By volunteerism, support groups. We establish and promote groups for peer support, youth and parent support, and advocacy. Groups working on community access issues we're involved with, mental health coalitions. We partner with Division of Behavioral Health regions, local drug and alcohol programs, detention centers, and groups working on workforce innovation and opportunity activities. So the delivery of core services can take many directions based on the goals of the consumer. So we have some examples of independent living specialists and how they delivered a core service. You might have to turn your volume up a little bit on your own device, and we had some slow internet challenges across the service area, so I apologize for any inconsistencies. And you'll be able to see this expanded PowerPoint on the Dropbox later. So Dwayne is going to start on youth transition and information referral.
My name is Dwayne Krolikowski. I'm an independent living specialist. I have a consumer who I've been working with for quite a while now, almost a year. He came to us in February of 2020. He has an intellectual disability that causes problems with his processing information, causes him to have a lack of emotion control, and also really causes some memory issues. When we first started working together, he was in a group home, and the goal was for him to transition out of the group home and back to living with his parents. He had been placed in the group home because of the emotion control issues. He had a volatile temper, and so that was the biggest thing that his parents wanted to see resolved before moving back into the home. So we worked a lot with him on ways to control his anger when he felt that way, breathing exercises to control his emotions in general. Also just a lot of things to help him process information better, know that he could ask questions if he needed to, if he didn't understand something. He would get very frustrated because he's prideful and didn't want to mention when he didn't understand something. So all of those things were complicating his life at the time. And so we worked really hard on sort of just those general skills to get him to a point where his parents felt like he could return to their home. After a while, he really improved the emotion control using the strategies that we put in place, and was able to return to his parents' home. And so that was a big win for us when the day he was able to do that. So once he got back into his parents' home, the goal changed from transitioning to the group home to his parents' home to transitioning from his parents' home eventually to live on his own independently. There were some other things that were precluding him from doing that. He really needed help with learning how to make a proper schedule so he remembered his appointments, learning budgeting. Budgeting skills were a big one. He had a lot of difficulty understanding money, and so we worked really hard on the basics of that, and just sort of those independent living skills day to day that he would need to live on his own. His parents also helped a whole lot with that. He comes from an excuse me, an excellent family that gave him all the opportunities he could possibly have. They really helped with managing his medications as well because of the memory issues. He struggled with that, and so they were able to put a lot of help us put a lot of strategies in place for him to properly manage his medications on his own as well. It was during this time that he was living at his parents' home that we were actually able to utilize one of our other core services with him, which is information and referral. We got him referred to a local agency to help him find employment, which was successful. Also to a local day program where he could really learn and back up some of those same living skills that we were working on. And so while I was working on those basic independent living skills, those referrals were just kind of giving him a backup to reaffirm those skills and also helping with the employment piece. We really worked on, at this point, budgeting. Once he got a job, we were able to really set up a very specific budget, and he was able to really learn more about money and see where his money was going. And you could tell that the more he learned about it and better he understood it, the more confidence he got with handling money in general. So that was a really good process and interesting to see him sort of blossom in that way. And so finally, we, having worked on all of those skills, were able to transition him from his parents' home out to living independently. He just moved into his own apartment. There's still some things we're working on with scheduling and medication management, but he's doing very well. In my opinion, doing better each day with living independently. And so that's so far been a very successful transition as well. So it's been a very fun journey with this consumer. Just seeing him sort of grow, taking him from a group home all the way to living independently on his own. He worked very hard to implement the strategies we put in place. So that was excellent to see. And like I said, he's out on his own now and doing very well.
Hi, my name is Jamie. In 2006, I acquired a disability that left me in the nursing home for approximately 4.5 years. In May of 2010, I decided I couldn't live out my life in a nursing home. I felt I was too independent and too young. So I went to the social worker to find out what steps needed to be taken to get me into my own place. The first thing I needed to do, of course, was find an apartment, and that was my first contact with the housing authority. I had to fill out an application, get on their waiting list, and take a class. In the interim, they provided me with a list of available rental places in the Scottsbluff-Gearing area. I called and asked about the rental price per month, whether utilities were included in that price, was it a pet-friendly apartment, and most importantly for me, was it handicap wheelchair accessible. The accommodations that I needed eliminated over half of the available spaces in the area. But I was fortunate enough to find one that met all my needs, and in September of 2010, I moved into my own apartment. The process of moving required me to do some self-advocacy. That meant I needed to contact the housing authority. I needed to contact the utilities company, the cable company, the phone company. In the past, I'd always had somebody to work tandem with on advocacy. That was no longer the case. I had to do it all for myself. And self-advocacy is basically making sure that your needs and wants are taken care of by asking for them. In 2011, I started working with vocational rehabilitation, and I had two goals set. The first one was employment. I really wanted to go back to work among people, among the public. I felt I could still bring something to an employer that would benefit the job. The other goal I had was to purchase my hand-controlled vehicle. Between 2011 and 2018, I was able to work a couple of positions and volunteer in a few others. The accessibility component really presented an issue as there weren't a lot of places that were truly handicap accessible. However, I think the reason I wasn't able to find anything is because I was meant to work for Independence Rising, and that happened in September of 2018. In December of that same year, I was able to fulfill goal number 2, and that was purchasing my van. In December of that year, I also learned how to drive it. And February 2nd of 2019, I was able to obtain my driver's license. And this whole process greatly impacted my independence. It gave me the ability to do things that I hadn't been able to do before. And one of those things was to continue the computer skills training that we were doing with students up at ESU 13. I decided that they had probably mastered the art of keyboarding and it was time to challenge them. So after talking with their teachers, decided a PowerPoint presentation would be a great way for them to learn a new computer skill as well as be creative. So every great PowerPoint needs a great theme. And after discussing it with the teachers, decided that advocacy, particularly self-advocacy, would be a great area for them to focus on. During our discussion of advocating for yourselves, they realized that they spend every day doing that. At home, it's asking for a particular kind of sandwich for lunch, choosing between 2 options for dinner, asking if your curfew can be extended on Friday night so you can attend the movies with a friend. At school and at work, it was asking questions when you didn't understand something, letting people know of your concerns, basically making sure that your needs and wants were being met. And that's what self-advocacy is. The fact that I had gone through this process, I think gave me more credibility working with the kids. I was able to understand where they were coming from. I was able to give them suggestions on making it easier for themselves to advocate when necessary. I also explained to them that self-advocacy is a lifelong journey. No matter where you're at, home, school, or work, you're always going to be advocating for yourself. And I told them to speak up, speak out, use your voice, and be heard.
Hi, my name is Erica Richards, and I'm an independent living specialist, and I will be speaking on peer mentoring. I'd like to begin with a quote by Jim. Hi, my name is Erica Richards, and I'm an independent living specialist, and I will be speaking on peer mentoring. I'd like to begin with a quote by Jim Rohn, which says, "My mentor said, let's go do it, not you go do it." How powerful when someone says, let's. I think that encompasses peer mentoring almost to a T. I definitely live by that and feel that it's valuable information when entering into a peer mentoring relationship. For me, I have an individual I work with who has truly been through the ringer his entire life with his disability. Now, mind you, he's not extremely old. And because of all of those things accumulated together, there's a sense of hurt, a feeling of abandonment, a sense of just being forgotten and just broken. And so when we first met and we had our first initial meeting, I knew afterwards that I was in for it. I knew it was going to be something where my approach needed to come from a place of meeting him where he was. And for us, that looked an awful lot like keeping my word, keeping a consistent appointment time, and letting him speak. That really was a catalyst, just letting him have the floor. The reason that happened for us was due to all of the trust and frustration that he has endured throughout his life. And so I knew it wasn't going to be easy. And so that's the approach that I took. He had experienced adversity anywhere from schools to doctors to family to food pantries to housing agencies to grocery stores. And the list goes on and on. So, it was almost as though there was a brick wall there. And so over time, we have established a pretty amazing relationship. And he's at a place now where that trust has been built and his whole mindset has changed because experiences stopped being negative and started to become something productive and positive. And because of that, he started acquiring hope. I think it's important to understand there's no magic wand that automatically creates success when peer mentoring an individual who has been through any type of adversity. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of creativity, and requires us to understand, but even if we can't fully understand, but to do our best to walk or put ourselves in their shoes. When doing that, the stage is set in a way that they have not experienced before. So, here we are making tremendous progress and strides in areas that are desperately needed in his personal world that would become of benefit. That's taken a lot of time and a lot of patience and a lot of understanding. And advocacy is sometimes a huge part of peer mentoring. Just walking hand in hand in this situation with him, but being willing to be a voice if needed has been imperative for our situation. I think that also always having a growth mindset and learning attitude has been of benefit for the both of us, not just me, but him. There's a sense of mindset and learning that comes along with gaining trust or building trust. And so taking it at their stride and not my own has been something that I've learned through this particular situation, for which I am eternally grateful for. I also know you know, it's one of those things where you get a chance to look at yourself too. And so what ends up happening is that the peer mentoring, you know, in the disability world becomes a blessing to them and us at the same time. And so that's probably the most precious piece that comes along with this territory, and something that you will forever be changed by. And I wouldn't want it any other way. And celebrating those milestones together becomes something that is not just etched in your heart, it's etched in stone, and it's forever etched in their heart. And so that's a good thing.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm an independent living specialist, and one of the core services that I want to talk today about is institutional transitioning. Independence Rising had the opportunity to be able to partner up with Scottsbluff County Detention Center this past year to conduct a program that would discuss independent living skills, life skills. It's a life skills class. It was very important for Independence Rising to gain the trust and respect of the Scottsbluff County Detention Center and all its staff. We feel it's very important that all people have the opportunity to receive services to better their life if that is so what they choose. And the detention center has a population that is underserved, and Independence Rising just wants to be able to be there to help those that want to get on this path of recovery in their life and be able to start making some steps up. The classes that we conducted at the Scottsbluff Detention Center are split into two groups, a men's group and a women's group. Each group lasting about an hour and 15 minutes, with 15 minutes to be able to go in between classes. As you can imagine, there are numerous security measures to follow, and that does require time. And we were trained of how to handle all those security measures before we started conducting the program there. We learned things like how to use the walkie-talkie radios, what codes we should use as being a life skills teacher there, and then also how to conduct ourselves professionally, which we do a lot of training in Independence Rising on that as well. The lesson plan that we would use to be able to conduct these classes titled, well, the lessons plan came from some material called Living in Balance. And some of the chapters in that material consisted of subjects like stress and emotional well-being, anger management, communication, relapse prevention, attitudes and beliefs, and independent living skills, among other subjects that would arise in a classroom. This class is a 5-week course, and each week, taking on one of these subjects and other discussion. And at the end of the 5-week course, the 5th week, we would celebrate in the classroom with certificates of completion, and as well as having a little snack. We felt, as an agency, we just felt that it was important that we share with these people the joys of life. It's just important for this population to be able keep hope while they're in there, that people do care about their recovery and their well-being out there. And we just want them to know that there are agencies like ours out there, ready and willing to help them. The environment was always very friendly and respectful, and it was just really awesome to watch them share their experience, not only with me but with each other. And they used this time to encourage each other with their experiences and advice. A lot of them may have been in and out of the institutional life, the majority of their life, and some of them, you know, were first timers, but nonetheless, they all had something to offer each other. And I would have to say that was my favorite thing about conducting this class, was just how awesome it was that they banded together, knowing that none of them were above each other. They just had an immense respect for each other because they were going through a lot of the similar things that life kicked at them. So at the end of the 5-week course, the 5th week, as a conductor, I would talk to them about a wellness plan that we use as peer support specialists in other programs of Independence Rising. Peer support is a vital service to provide for people who are in and out of the institution living, and because a lot of what they deal with always came back down to maybe their mental and emotional well-being. So doing a recovery plan at the end of the 5-week course is just such a great idea, because it would cover things like questions like, where will you go when you are released? Who will pick you up? And think about what it is that you need when you are released. And so continued services with Independence Rising after being released, a lot of times it was housing that they were looking for, food vouchers, clothing vouchers, whatever it is that Independence Rising could do for them. If we couldn't provide the exact service or thing that they are needing, then we would connect them with other agencies and other people in the community that would be able to provide those services. And it's just awesome to be right there at the forefront of providing these services. It's nice. It's really good to see them just grow and move forward in life and live a healthy lifestyle. Due to COVID, our program did come to a halt because of the COVID. So obviously all the programs that are being held within some of these institutes are no longer being conducted just because of the seriousness of the nature of spreading the COVID disease. But we do plan to pick this program back up over the next few months, and we are super excited to be able to expand to maybe other areas of Nebraska and to be able to provide these services.
Hi, my name is Mariah. I'm an independent living specialist, and I wanted to give an example of a consumer that I worked with to help him with his independent living skills. So when I started working with this consumer, his goals were housing, and another goal that he had was to obtain his personal documents. Another goal that he had was to graduate from high school, and another goal that he had, of course, was to find stable housing and to find employment. The consumer, when I first met him, was living out of a motel room, He was also had been in the foster care system and had been adopted by his foster parents. He found himself homeless at the age of 18, and he wanted to find stable housing for the very beginning. So I had worked with him to have him reach out to his natural supports to find stable housing. He did reach out to some natural supports and found stable housing. He also, another one of his goals that he completed was graduating from high school. And another goal that he had wanted to complete was to get all of his personal documents that he didn't have. So I worked with him, and we worked to get his birth certificate, and he applied for a social security card, and he also applied for a state issued ID card. After that, he graduated from high school. He was able to get a job, and he got a job, and decided to, as far as his housing was concerned, he decided to move in with his birth mother and take care of her. So I would have to say the consumer was successful with completing his goals and becoming independent. And he did complete all of his goals for his independent living skills that he had wanted to complete. I believe he could have gotten housing. He could have gotten his own housing, but you know, those are choices that he chose to make as an adult.
So we've got our offices listed here, and then staff and contact information, and you can take a look at that in the Dropbox. I wanted to bring in Irene Britt, our executive director, and for some remarks.
Well, Mary, I think you did a nice job. I don't know if there's much left for me to say. I do want to add that we do have some upcoming projects. We have a transitional youth shelter that was listed on that last page that we will be, we're finishing renovations on and working on licensure, and we'll plan to have up and running in 2021. I can't think, we have about between probably 65 and 75 employees, just depending. We have a group of chore providers with our Independence at Home program. So I think, Mary, were you able to put anything in the Dropbox on our fee-for-service programs also?
I can add that.
Okay, there's information on our fee-for-service programs also that, of course, we wouldn't have had time to go over today. So we just have an awesome staff. And I think they did a great job on this PowerPoint, as well as Mary. Mary deserves a lot of credit for this. She did a great job on preparing for the presentation today.
Thank
you. So before we open it for questions, Dawn, did you want to?
Dawn is muted.
Dawn is muted.
Yes. Yeah, I wanted to thank all of you first before we open for questions. I think that was very, very complete and very well done by everyone. I see two questions down in the Q&A from Mary Angus, but I think it was actually for somebody who was on the video part of the Independence Rising. Presentation.
Yeah, those are sent to me and I responded to her. Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Well, I think one thing before people start asking questions, it's really important, and Mary touched on it as well. You know, we are very rural in Nebraska, and the goal for Centers for Independent Living is to make sure that everybody is able to access services. And I think the one thing we hear constantly, and it's not special here to Nebraska, it's all over, is that people with disabilities, when they finally do find a Center for Independent Living to help them, they'll say, why didn't I know about you before? And I wish I had known these services were available. So I think today is a really good chance for our centers to talk about, you know, what we do so that people understand. Call us. You know, the number one thing we do is information referral. It doesn't hurt you. It's free to call us. And at least we can try and do that warm handoff. If we can't help you, we can find somebody that will. And so, you know, make sure you spread the word for people, because it's so important that people realize what a resource Centers for Independent Living are. And they are free. And, you know, the Centers for Independent Living 5 core services are something that everybody can have access to. And even during COVID, we are open, we're providing services, you know, virtually, we're doing Zoom, we're doing it on the phone. We haven't shut down at all. So that's, I think, if nothing else comes out of this today, at least maybe people will know a little bit more that we are there and can, and in getting that out, because I hear so many times from people, we wish we would have known about you sooner.
Right. This is Dawn. I think number one, yes, that, you know, the 5 core services are free. We're not asking for money up front. We're not asking for proof of disability. So it's not anything where you have to come in with papers saying Social Security says I'm disabled. You can say, I'm disabled and I need help with housing. I'm disabled, I need help with going through this social service agency because they're, I don't understand this stuff. Can you help me? So use us, or use them, not us as in me, but use them. They're there for that.
We have some questions. Do we want to just jump in, or what do you want to do on that?
So let me see. Let me read one from the chat. From Sharon Ohnberger. Say, recently met with a person with a disability who is interested in engaging in accessibility advocacy in her community. Are there resources you could provide to support her in that effort to connect with her local officials, learning the process, learning about funding sources for that work, etc.? And that's for anybody.
You want to go, Mary, or you want me to?
Well, I think we could both. I don't know where this individual's located, but I would be happy to talk to her, and I'm sure Kathy would as well.
She's in Omaha.
There are, we do have individuals in our agency involved in this kind of work, that are involved in, you know, groups like this. So, I mean, I would welcome an opportunity to talk to her, if you want to give her my contact information.
Well, she's in Omaha, so I think that would be,
okay.
That would be, we have a Center for Independent Living in Omaha.
Okay.
So Sharon, please contact our Center for Independent Living in Omaha. And if you don't have access to the website for our numbers, I can give you that phone number. So our Omaha office number is toll-free 1-800-843-5784. And if not, if you can't remember that, you can send it to the one here in Lincoln and we can forward you. So it's not a problem. Okay. But that is, yes, absolutely. That is something that we would work on. So good question.
Let's see. Captioning is great, but have you considered adding an interpreter for presentations? We do have 2, don't we?
Yes, there are 2 interpreters that each highlighted to make it easier to see them. So, the only thing is the person has to have one of the latest versions of the Zoom in order to make it work. So if your Zoom has not been updated recently, you might want to try that.
I do not see any other messages. Either Irene or Mary will, Dee Hankey will be contacting you about the chore services. So.
And I do have a question. I felt like it was not clear what parts of the state you worked in. Please clarify that.
Could you repeat that, Kathy?
I'm not sure it was clear that you have very distinctly different parts of the state you work with. So could you clarify what your areas are?
Sure. The Centers for Independent Living that the League runs are in Lincoln, Norfolk, and Omaha. And out of those, we also do the area all the way across. We do like Keapaha and over. And we do the North, Central, and the eastern part of the state. And then I'm going to let Mary talk about where they have their actual offices in the areas that they serve.
Yes, so we serve 50 counties of the state, and we have offices in Grand Island, Kearney, North Platte, Gothenburg, and Scottsbluff. And so we serve the 11 counties of the Panhandle, and then we go east to Wheeler County. In there's a little bit of a jig jag there around Merrick, Hamilton, Clay, Knuckles down to the border of Kansas.
But one thing to remember that you can call either of our offices, either the Leagues or Independence Rising, because one of our 5 core services is information and referral. So even if we don't serve the area in which you're calling, we can give you the center that does. So there is no wrong place to call.
Yes.
What, Kathy, this is Dawn. What is your League's number in Lincoln?
I was getting ready to type that. So It is 402-441-7871, or the 800 number is 888-508-4758. And the League website is www.leagueofhumandignity.com.
I have 888-508. I'm still back on that.
4758.
58. Or leagueofhumandignity.com.
And I'm going to put our website in the chat as well. Irene, do you have anything to add about our service area or anything? I just mentioned kind of the area and the office locations.
The office locations, yes. So we have office locations spread throughout our 50 counties, and then our office locations are fully functioning for independent living program services. We do provide some of our fee for program services out of those offices also, but we do have 5 office locations. We aren't open to the public right now, but they are still staffed. We can do did you mention equipment loan, Mary?
No, go ahead.
Well, I'll let you go ahead and cover that.
Okay.
You do more with equipment loan.
Yes, we do have equipment loan out of Grand Island, primarily Grand Island and Scottsbluff. Gothenburg does have some equipment as well. And so
we are
we're doing
looking at
kind of case by
expanding
case
that
right
to
now.
North Platte some, I think.
Yeah, and it's kind of case by case during the pandemic.
Very good. Well, I think this was wonderful. I appreciate all the work that everybody put into it. And the videos really told a story.
And Mary made a comment in the chat that this was a really good presentation. So if there are no more questions for our presenters, we are recording this session. We do it every session, every month. We have a YouTube channel. And
As it just said, huh?
yeah, really. So on the first Thursday of March, we will be having another educational series on what is assistive technology and how do I effectively obtain it. So I hope everybody will be able to sign up for that one and join us on that date for this, the next in the series. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.